They had to now go upstairs. So just before they went upstairs, this is when Zach got onto his cell phone to call his wife to come home, because the realtor was at home, was now in the house, ready to assess the house. So Zach made the call, but there would be no answer on Michaela's side. So he eventually told the realtor, wait here, let me go upstairs and check. Maybe she's at home. Maybe she took a nap waiting for us. And so he ran upstairs. The next thing that the realtor hears is this excruciating screams coming from Zach, where he said in Afrikaans, "Ach nee me liefie, ach nee liefie," basically meaning in English, "Oh no, my love, no, my love, no, my love." And that is when the realtor got concerned, and she ran upstairs and she opened the door where she heard this shouting coming from, but the room was pitch dark. So she asked Zach to please open the blinders so she can see what is happening. So immediately Zach goes and opened the blinders, and voila, the body of Michaela dismembered and blood splatter everywhere, on the roof, on the floor, on the closet doors, everywhere, including the mirror, you name it. Blood was just everywhere. And of course, the realtor was like, in the world is going on? Of course, she had to hold herself from screaming. And this side, Zach is screaming and screaming for his wife's name, Michaela, but she is dead. So Marcel, on the stand, testifies to the court, basically telling them why Michaela had to die and how exactly she died. Cecilia had ordered for her death, and the reason why she ordered for her death is because Michaela confided in her husband, which is Zach Valentine, and told him that she was no longer interested in this group. She wanted out. She was tired of killing people for absolutely no reason. And so she was asking her husband that she and him must quit this group. The husband, guess what he goes and do? He goes and tells Cecilia that my wife is no longer interested in being part of this group. So now Cecilia, feeling rejected, feeling all angry, she thought she's gotta go. She knows too much. And of course, instructs Zach to give her a heavy dose of sleeping pills, which Zach does the previous night, gives his wife, Michaela, heavy doses of sleeping pills. These sleeping pills knocked Michaela out, like completely stone cold out, till the next morning. Even the next morning, she still could not move a finger. So basically, they formulated a plan that Zach must not be present in the house, basically to create Zach an alibi that he was at work during the time Michaela was being murdered. So indeed, in the morning, Zach woke up, tried to wake his wife up. She was still stone cold, non-responsive. And then he left the house door unlocked so that there will be ease of access for those that are coming to murder her. So around 7:38 a.m., Miranda and her daughter Marcel were the ones to carry out the murder. They entered the house, went upstairs. Marcel says her mother went over to Michaela. She tried to shake her, basically to wake her up, to see if she would wake up and be conscious, but they realized that she was non-responsive. Not that she was non-responsive because she was still breathing, but she could not move her body. This is when Miranda took out the hammer and began to pounce and pounce and pounce on Michaela. Michaela at some point tried to wake up. Basically, she was feeling pain. I'm not quite sure if the pain she was feeling, it was faint or it excruciating. I can just imagine being overdosed with sleeping pills and you cannot move your body and somebody's attacking you, how that must have felt for her. So she was just helpless and defenseless at this point. When Miranda realized that Michaela was trying to wake up, she then started pouncing Michaela on the face up until all her teeth were knocked out, her face disfigured, and as a result, she then took out more weapons. She began to knife Michaela all over her body. While she was busy knifing Michaela, she looked over at Marcel and asked her, "Come on, what are you standing there for?" She threw a knife at Marcel, who also went and continued basically knifing Michaela until she went limp, basically dead. Michaela even said to the court that this is very difficult for her because she and Michaela used to be close. This is the person who taught her how to do her makeup, how to cook, how to do her hair, and would tell her that she's beautiful and all that sort of stuff. So she and Michaela were close friends, and it was very difficult for her to witness and also kill her best friend. So when the realtor was asked by the police, how did the husband react when he got home and found his wife brutally murdered like that? Estelle said this man looked as calm as a cucumber. As a matter of fact, he came to her while the police were busy investigating or basically cordoning off the crime scene, and then he asked the realtor, "Can we still sell the house?" The realtor was like, "This is a wrong time to be asking me this. You should be grieving for your wife." But he looked unbothered, as if he knew that this was going to happen to his wife. So she was very, very confused. I would be confused too. I'd be traumatized, as a matter of fact. But she did testify in court that Zach did not look like a grieving husband at all because it was calm. It's as if he expected this to happen. So before Michaela was murdered, Cecilia had instructed both Michaela and her husband Zach to hand over their life saving, and it was a little over 2 million rand. That is about 109,923 US dollars. They handed over all of their life savings over to Cecilia Stain. If you were wondering what was this money for, so Cecilia had told a fib to her church members that when she was a Satanist, the church that she was part of, if the first child of any couple had to be killed, if they refused to have the child killed, then they will have to give it up to an orphanage in the United States. So she took it upon herself that she was going to take care of these orphans that are living in the United States or were shipped to the United States, that their parents avoided having them murdered. So the church ought to assist her in taking care of these orphans. As a result, they needed to put a special contribution towards taking care of these children. Of course, the church members obliged. They did not ask questions. Some people were tithing 2,100 rand. Some people were tithing 10,000 rand. The Valentines gave up 2 million rand. That's how gullible people are today. Now, Michaela, understand, was asked by the judge, why did you participate in the death of Michaela? She said if she did not participate, her mother would have told on her, and Cecilia would have instructed for her own demise. So she was afraid. That is why she participated. Mind you, she was 14 years old. Do not forget about that. 14 years old. Now, Cecilia, feeling all powerful, she felt that, I'm not enough. I'm dissatisfied with all the killings. I want more blood. I want more blood to spill. And so she ordered for more people to be murdered. All of this was revenge against Rhea. She wanted Rhea to feel the pain of being heartbroken like she, Cecilia, experienced. So she started looking for different ways on how to cause this pain on Rhea. Cecilia's hatred for Rhea was so much so that she once attempted to have Rhea's son murdered. Unfortunately, no one was willing to take out Rhea's son. I'm not quite sure if they defied her or maybe they were busy killing other people, so there was no one available to carry out this crime on Rhea's son. So that is how, basically, that's how the court and Rhea found out that her son was up next for murder. So after the attempt of Rhea's son, the group goes underground. They go underground for a good 3 years. Now, I'm supposing during the time of the 3 years that they had disappeared, Cecilia was busy spending all this money that she had collected from the gullible members of her church, Electus Perdaius, and she was probably living La Vida Loca, traveling here, traveling there, probably visiting all the satanic sites in the world, and she came back broke in 2015. When they reappeared, they put themselves together once again, and this is when Cecilia told the group that we don't have money. We don't have money to pay the rent of the church. We don't have money to do absolutely anything, and the orphans in America will starve to death. So we need to find money that we ourselves can survive on and have roof over our heads, because sooner or later we are going to be kicked out on the streets, and none of us will want to worship on the streets like some kind of poverty-stricken people. So a plan was devised. So who were the people that were left in the Electus Perdaius church? That was Cecilia, the leader, Miranda, co-leader, her two children, the LaRue and Marcel, and this time, and Zach. And then they also recruited a new member by the name of John Bernard. Now, John Bernard was a 44-year-old printer. His business is in the printing industry. I'm not quite sure if you call him a printer, because a printer is a machine. Okay, anyways, he was a printer and a very successful one at that. And so one of the things that Cecilia pitched to John was the fact that basically Cecilia told John the whole truth, who they were, what they've done, and how they want more of this to happen. Basically, she was looking for a way to make money, and the only way they can make money is through people dying. John, instead of taking his cell phone and dialing the police and say, hey, all these murders that have been happening in Krugersdorp, I just found the mastermind. But no, John says, hey, I have a printing company and it's a perfect spot for you to find victims. Interestingly, John Bernard and Cecilia Stein used to be friends. So John kind of like trusted Cecilia with everything that she was telling him. But what I don't understand is, why use your shop to lure people to their death? I don't get that part. Because he's a rich man, he could have taken some money and say, hey friend, hold, here's $1 million, survive on that, see what you do with it, see how you multiply it. Not hand over innocent people to be murdered by this brutal woman. So in 2015, a 51-year-old Peter Mayer and his 47-year-old wife Joan Mayer are found dead by the son. They have been bludgeoned to death with a blunt force object. Now, the Mayers used to be friends and business partners with John Bernard. Now, John Bernard had told Cecilia and her group that the Mayers were quite wealthy because they owned very successful businesses, and they also owned a piece of land in KwaZulu-Natal that they had intended on turning it into the biggest water park in the Southern Hemisphere. Bernard also told Cecilia that he believes that the Mayers keep a large sum of money in their house. They were the perfect target to get the money that the Mayers had in their homes, also to withdraw some money out of their bank accounts if they could. So because John had told Cecilia about Maya's plan, by the way, John Bernard had a conversation with the Myers because he also showed interest in becoming a partner in this water park business. And of course, the Myers were very happy to have John because they've known each other for many, many years. So they trusted each other. So they didn't see any reason why they should doubt John. Now, John takes this business plan or this business talk to Cecilia. And that's when Cecilia devised a plan that Miranda, together with Zach, will pretend to be South African government workers who will go to the Myers and talk about this water park that they want to put together. Of course, the Myers are thinking, oh my goodness, we are getting investors. Why not invite the government workers to their home and then give them a full blueprint of this plan that they have? And indeed, the Myers told Zach and Miranda that they are going to cook them dinner while they talk about this. So on the 27th of November 2015, Zach and Miranda arrives at the Myers house, and unfortunately they had not cooked because it was a Friday, and the Myers felt, why cook when we could order some food at a restaurant? So they entered the house of the Myers, and the Myers quickly told them that actually we did not cook, we just sent our son to go and get us the food, and he will be returning quite soon. So when Miranda heard that the son is out and coming back soon, she was like, we cannot waste any more time. These people gotta die, and they gotta die now. And she tells Zach that, and that's when Zach pulls out the gun and then points the couple to the ground. They take some zip tires and tie them. They tie their hands and feet and then demand for the safe code. And of course, the Myers would not give up the safe code. They proceed to bludgeon them with the hammer that they were carrying. So the first person that they shot and killed was Joan, in the hopes that Pete would give up the code for the safe. But Pete was like, I am not giving you anything. And as a result, he was also killed. And that's when Zach and Miranda ran upstairs, went to the safe, opened it, but there was nothing. There was not even a cent inside the safe, not even a document. They ran back downstairs and saw 2 cell phones and 1,500 Rand sitting on the table. 1,500 Rand is about $165. And then they sped out. So basically, that was the life of the Myers, worth $164. When the police were called to the Myers house, they did not find any false entry. Therefore, they ruled that the person that had killed the Myers is somebody that knew them and they trusted, and so the hunt began. So when Zach and Miranda returned to Cecilia and showed her the things that they managed to get out of the Myers house, she was livid. She was like, what? We cannot live on 1,500 Rand. And what the hell am I supposed to do with these 2 cell phones? Do you want the police to catch us? So they disposed of the cell phones. And of course, they needed to come up with plan C, because the plans that they were trying out were just not working and were not making the money, and the money had ran out. So this is when Cecilia came up with a brilliant plan. Zach's life insurance. She was like, Zach, you have a life insurance, right? Zach was like, yeah, it's worth 3 million Rand. That is about 163,393 US dollars. Then Cecilia was like, but in order for us to claim life insurance, there needs to be a body, right? And then Zach was like, yeah. Then Cecilia was like, I don't want you to die because you are a valuable member of this group. Zach, instead of like, wait a minute, am I the next target? Run. No. He's like, yeah, I think you need me. So what do we do? That is when Cecilia was like, you have that friend. What was his name again? Jared? The 2 of you look very much alike. Don't you think if we got him to be you in a car accident, the insurance will pay out the life insurance of the 3 million rand, and then our lives will be much better than what it is now. Zach, instead of saying, no, Jared and I don't look alike, but no, he's like, actually, that's a good idea. I'm going to go to my friend Jared and ask him to accompany me to the Free State. Now, Jared used to be a drug addict, and he was recovering from it, and he was putting his life together, and he had a pregnant wife, and as a result of that, they were putting together a business that was also beginning to grow legs, and so things were going well for Jared Jackson, by the way, that was his name. And so Zach so happened to know where Jared and the wife did their business. Basically, they were street vendors. They sold sweet chips and all these other goodies near a train station. So Zach then drove to the place of business and then greeted Jared's wife and asked Jared if he could please go on a drive with him. He would return him back to the wife in time. And so, of course, Jared, being friends with Zach, who was driving a very nice car, a BMW, because Zach was quite wealthy himself. He was an insurance broker by profession, and so he had all this money and all this wealth to splash around. So Jared felt, okay, maybe he would be able to pitch some few ideas to Zach about how to grow his business during the ride. So as they were driving, Zach had already come with a pre-opened soda, which he stashed with sleeping pills. I think he put the same amount of sleeping pills as he had put for his wife. And so Jared, unsuspecting, as they were driving, started drinking the soda. And as they continued to drive, Jared started feeling sleepy and fell asleep. Now, while they were driving, Miranda and her son, LaRue, were driving not too far behind. So when Jared fell asleep, this is when Zach pulled over in a secluded area, and Miranda and LaRue jumped out of the car. LaRue went in the back seat of Zach's car, took a cord, and basically hooked it over Jared's neck and began to pull. He pulled until Jared could not move anymore. Of course, he was now dead. After Jared had died, they all doused the entire car with paraffin, set it alight, and drove off with Jared inside. Of course, it did not take long before the police discovered this car that was burning alongside of the freeway. And so they noticed that there was a body inside the car. And as a result of that, they began their investigations. They noticed that the number plate or the plate number or registration belonged to a Zach Valentine. So they did the investigations, including the blood type and DNA and all that sort of stuff, to establish that the car is registered in the person that has burnt to death. So when they did the investigation, they realized that the blood types or the DNA did not match, and therefore the police ruled that the person that was in that car was not Zach Valentine. As a result of that, they called Discovery Insurance and said, "Oh, anybody that comes to claim life insurance, do not give it to them because they have some suspicions that it might not be the claimant or something of that nature." So, of course, there was no payment that was done. Cecilia had told Zach to go on a down low. He must not be seen anywhere. And so Zach and Cecilia started putting together a plan on how Zach was going to hide. And so the best way to hide, apparently, according to Cecilia, was to turn homeless. Basically, live on the street, be a street bum, be dirty, make sure that nobody recognizes you. And that's exactly what Zach does. And she tells Zach that the moment that the life insurance is paid out, I will come and get you from the street and then we go live happily ever after. But unfortunately, Cecilia will not pitch to Zach because the money never came as well. So Cecilia continued with her life together with Miranda and her 2 children. So 4 people now are left because Kyla is now dead. Zach is a street bum. The 4 of them are now are left, and they needed to come with a plan, and they need to come with a very solid plan sooner or later. And this is when they devised the plan that they were no longer going to kill people that they know, but they were going to kill strangers. However, the condition was the people that they were going to kill were people that were professionals, because professionals always have some spare cash somewhere in their homes or on themselves or on their vehicles, as well in their bank accounts. So Jared's wife, of course, became worried about her husband, his whereabouts, because Zach had come to collect him and went on a drive. So the first thing that the wife did was to call Cecilia to ask if she saw Jared. Of course, Cecilia was like, I have not seen or heard from your husband in a very long time. Why are you thinking he's with me? She was like, no, that's because you are friends with Zach. Zach had come to fetch him for a drive, and then he was going to return him back, but to this time he has not brought him. So I was wondering, maybe you saw both of them. And that is when Cecilia was like, no, Zach did not come and fetch Jared. But then the wife was like, no, Zach fetched him in my presence, and they left in my presence. So I know that Zach had picked up my husband from where we are doing business. And so Cecilia was like, nah, maybe you are just thinking because of the hormones, you're pregnant, you are imagining things. But anyways, just to let you know, Zach was involved in a terrible car accident. He's in a coma. Now, the wife was like, hang on a minute, what are you talking about? You were like, yeah, he's in a coma. He fell asleep behind the wheel while he was driving to the Free State province. And so it's not looking good. So, of course, the wife was thinking, okay, maybe my husband is one of the people, because she wanted to know, where is my husband? Is there anything said about him regarding that accident? But Cecilia was like, no, and she hung up. So not long after they've devised a plan of killing strangers, people that they had no links with at all, this is when they found their first victim. It was a 57-year-old Glenn McGregor, who was a self-employed accountant. McGregor had received a call from Miranda Stain, who told him that she needed to consult with him so that she could put together her finances, which were scattered, as well. She was also living beyond her means, and she needed an accountant who was going to give her personal financial advice. And so McGregor then gave her the address of where he worked. He basically worked at his own house, and he was a single man who was unmarried, did not live with anybody. And for Miranda, that was perfect, because she took her children along with her for this appointment. So the moment that McGregor opened the door, that is when Miranda took out a revolver that she was carrying and pulled the trigger, shooting McGregor on the stomach point blank. While Glenn McGregor was staggering around his office, Miranda was asking him for his bank account PIN number. And she said to him, if you give me the bank account number, I will leave you with this stomach wound, so you are able to call the police or call the ambulance, and you will survive this gunshot. So he thought, okay, yeah, that's true. Maybe I'll survive it. That's when he gave out his bank account PIN number, which was written down by Marcel. So once they were done with taking his PIN number, they proceeded to bludgeon him with a blunt force object. And when he died, they carried his body. This is now Miranda and her son, LaRue, carried his body to his bathtub, opened really boiling water all over his body, thinking they are killing the evidence, and then left him there, and they left, basically. When Miranda and her kids were in the car, that is when she transferred to her own bank account 3,000 Rand. But her reference was some raunchy name. The reason why she had a raunchy name was so that if somebody becomes suspicious, they will simply assume that he had a lady of the night in his house. Where the idea came from was from the fact that in his house he had nude pictures of women, so they thought anyways that they're gonna think he's a freak and all that sort of stuff, and so that's how they got away with that murder, so they thought. In May of 2016, the body of a 64-year-old Anthony Schofield was found in the boot, which is a trunk of his car. He was wrapped with many plastic bags. The police also found his body still having a cable wrapped around his neck, which they assume was the cause of his death. Miranda Stein had used the same modus operandi on Anthony Schofield by making an appointment for one thing or another and then meeting the victim and then have her son murder him after they have gotten his bank account PIN number. So Schofield basically wanted to meet Stein at a mall called Key West. I think it's somewhere in the West Rand. But at some point, LaRue, this is Miranda's son, called Mr. Schofield and told him that instead of meeting them at the mall, why doesn't he come to their apartment and then have this meeting with his mom? The reason why they did not want to meet the victims in public is because they were avoiding CCTV cameras if these people were found dead, so that their death would not be linked to them. So it was better if they were brought to their apartment and then they could do whatever it is that they wanted with them. So instead of saying, no, I want to still meet you in the mall, that's when Anthony Schofield drove to Miranda's house in Krugersdorp, where he was basically pointed with a 38 caliber revolver and told to lie down and give up his bank account PIN number, which he did. After giving up his PIN number, Miranda's children went to the mall, which was not too far from their home, and withdrew some money. When they came back, that is when LaRue took a cord and basically Mr. Anthony, and then when he had passed on, they wrapped his body with plastic bags and also threw him in the trunk of his vehicle, where he was found by the police. On the 26th of May 2016, a 29-year-old Kevin McAlpine was also found dead in a similar style as Anthony Schofield. He too was lured to the Stein house, where he was made to lie down and forced out his bank account PIN number, where the Stein children went and withdrew money. When LaRue came back, he also did exactly what he did to Anthony and then threw his body in the trunk of his car, where he was discovered by the police the following day. Probably you're wondering, hey, I have not heard you speak about the police in a very long time in this video. Where are they? What are they doing? All these people are falling like flies all over Krugersdorp and still no suspect is found? That's the same question I was asking myself while I was researching this case. Like, where are the police? People are dying in almost similar fashion, and yet the police have not stringed together that there might be a serial killer on the loose or a group of satanic worshippers killing people in Krugersdorp, because they have gone to 3 crime scenes or murder scenes where they found what looked like a satanic act of murder, and yet still no investigations that are showing any kinds of lead. It's not like Krugersdorp is a big city. It's not even, I don't think it's even a metro. It's a small city that used to be a mining town. Why is it difficult for the police to find these killers? I kept wondering. So if you're asking yourself the same question, then we are all asking ourselves the same question at this point. So on the 30th of May 2016, a 52-year-old Henle Lettigan, a real estate agent, was also murdered in a similar fashion as the first 2. She too was called by Miranda, who pretended to be interested in a property that she had eyed. So she made an appointment with Henle, and Henle indeed arrived at this property that Miranda showed interest in, And inside that very house, they carried out the murder. Basically, before murdering her, they ordered her to give up her bank account PIN number. And when she did, they then murdered her. So while the Steyn children went to withdraw the money, they did not count on the fact that Handler Litigan and her husband have a joint bank account. They've been married for 38 years at this point, and they had a joint bank account. Any amount that is withdrawn by either the couple, they will both receive a notification from the bank that such amount of money was withdrawn from their bank account. So the husband, of course, when 3,000 rand left their bank account, he was like, wait a minute, my wife and I never talked about any withdrawals. So he immediately called his wife to find out, hey, what's going on? But she would not answer her cell phone. This is when he knew that there was something terribly wrong that was happening or happened to his wife, because not only did the people or whoever was trying to withdraw the money kept putting the card to withdraw more money, but the husband would get more notification from the bank that somebody is withdrawing insufficient fund in this particular bank account. So this is when he became very concerned and went straight to the police and reported his wife missing. So a missing persons docket was opened and the police began to look for her. Unfortunately, the body of Handler Litigan would be found by school children while they were headed to school the next morning. So at this point, the Krugersdorp community would not have it with the police. They kept wondering why the killers still on the loose. Why haven't they been found? They were livid. They were angry, and rightfully so, because the police were not doing anything to catch these criminals. This is when the police basically started getting serious about investigating these murders. So the first thing that the police did was to collect CCTV footage from malls around Krugersdorp. So basically, they had some time where they were just going to sit down, eat some donuts, and drink some whatever it is that they drink, and start watching CCTV footages. It did not take the police a very long time before they start seeing the same people, the same couple going to this ATM and going to that ATM and going to that ATM, days following each other consecutively. And that is when they started pulling the footages much closer, and they realized that this is not a couple. These are young kids. So they wanted to know who these kids were, who their parents were, so that they can get to the bottom of this. And fortunately, it did not take the police that long before they found Leroux Steyn and his sister Marcel Steyn. They brought them to the police station, and they were so uncooperative. And basically, they were just downright rebellious and rude towards the police because they did not want to talk about whatever it is they were brought there for. So they tried every trick in the book to question them, but they would not say a word. So their life just continued the way it did. Miranda continued teaching all these days, and all this time that they're busy murdering people, Miranda went to school to teach. By the way, Miranda was known to be a very good teacher. Basically, she was the best teacher. So she continued going to teach in school while she was busy murdering people at the same time. So the police started thinking of ways of getting these kids to talk and basically spill the beans why they've been murdering all these people. So this is when the police were alerted that Miranda Steyn had changed her will. So the police then decided to go pay Miranda a visit at her workplace at school. And so they asked her to please show them her will and testimony, her last will and testimony. So when they read through the last will and testimony, they discovered that Miranda had taken off all her kids of the will and gave everything to Cecilia Steyn. So now that sparked a lot of red flags for the police, but they thought, hey, this is a good weapon we can use against the Steyn kids. Maybe they might talk if we show them their mother's intention. So they went to the Krugersdorp police station and said, hey guys, do you still want to talk? They said no. And that is when the police started looking at who is the weakest link between Marcel and Leroux. And they discovered that Leroux was more vulnerable than Marcel, because Marcel was just stone cold. And so they then took Leroux to the interrogation room and basically showed him the will and said, look, this is your mom's will and testimony. And he saw that it was original, and then he saw that they had been removed as beneficiaries should their mother pass on, and everything was going to go to Cecilia. That angered Leroux, because number one, he's always been fighting for his mother's love, and now to know that his mother really doesn't care about him and his sister, he was like, what do you want to know? That is when he started singing like a canary. He told the police everything, every last detail of what they've been doing since 2012. The police were in shock. They could not believe that all this time they had the killers right under their noses. So of course everybody was arrested. Cecilia was arrested, Miranda was arrested, Marcel was already in police custody together with her brother Leroux, who sang like a canary, and of course they were taken to trial, but the trials were not held at the same time. Miranda had her own trial, Cecilia had her own trial, Marcel had her own trial, as well as Zach had his own trial, as much as Leroux had his own trial. However, the state did approach both the staying children and gave them some kind of plea bargain or a plea deal that if they testified against their mother, against Cecilia, against Zach and John, they were going to get a lesser sentence. Of course, Marcel was like, nope, I'm not interested in taking a deal with you. However, Leroux did take a plea deal, and he was promised 25 years imprisonment instead of the hefty sentences that he would have gotten if he was found guilty. They also did the same thing with John Bernard. He was also offered a plea deal of 30 years in prison if he testified against Cecilia, against Zach, and all the other people. And indeed, he took the plea bargain and testified against Zach and Cecilia, particularly Cecilia, who recruited him to killing these people. And he pled guilty for the murder of 5 people. So indeed, he was sentenced to 30 years. Leroux was also sentenced to 25 years because of the plea deal. And Marcel decided to go to trial because she pleaded not guilty. So while her trial was going on, and then the witness, basically the families, the surviving families taking the stand and talking about their loved one that was brutally murdered, this is when Marcel started noticing that, hey, hang on a minute. So you're telling me what I was doing was wrong? Because she always thought everything that she was doing was right, simply because she believed in Cecilia, and since she would not question anything Cecilia said because it directly came from God. And secondly, her own mother, who is supposed to be teaching her and protecting her against people like Cecilia, was also participating in this killing. So she thought in her young mind what she was doing was correct. That's what she tells the court. But she also says, after listening to all these people and the pain that she has caused, she feels that she ought to be punished, and she must be punished for what she had done and participated in the killing of people. And she also felt that Cecilia, as well as her mother, also need to be punished for all that they have done. So she refused a plea deal and said, I need to be punished. There is no way I'm going to allow myself to take a lesser sentence. Sentence me to your heart's content. And she looked at the families that she took their loved ones away from them and apologized, sincerely apologized to them, told them she did not know what she was doing. And she said, this is not an excuse that I am giving, but I really did not know what I was doing. I thought it was God who sent Cecilia, and everything that they were doing was within was correct, basically. This is where I'm like, whoa, I did not see that one coming. Of course, the trial of Miranda was carried out. She was found guilty as charged of all the charges that were laid against her, and I will read you guys the sentences a little bit later in this video. But anyways, let me just read you. Together with Cecilia had her own trial. Miranda testified against Cecilia. Cecilia denied everything. She was like, I wasn't even aware that these people were busy killing people because I was not there. I'm a sickly person. She came to court wearing an oxygen pipe, dragging an oxygen tank into the court, pretending to look frail, pretending to be suffering from multiple personality disorders, pretending to have high blood pressure, and now and again she would look faint, but nobody bought all that act from Cecilia. So she too was found guilty. They said, even though you may not have pulled the trigger, you used human triggers to kill people. You are the mastermind. Everybody had testified against you being the mastermind, and therefore you are as guilty as those that carried out these murders. So as I've mentioned, let me just read you, because I wrote the notes down so I don't want to forget. So John Bernard took a plea deal and was sentenced to 30 years in prison with 10 years served as suspended sentence. But all of this is if he testified honestly against Cecilia and Miranda Stein, respectively. Bernard pleaded guilty to 5 counts of murder. LaRue Stein, as per the plea deal, he got 25 years imprisonment if he truthfully testified against his mother, Miranda, and Cecilia. Zach Valentine was sentenced to 8 life sentences plus 93 years in prison. Miranda was sentenced to 11 life sentences plus 115 years in prison. Cecilia was sentenced to 13 life sentences plus 155 years in prison. And Marcel was sentenced to 7 life sentences plus 144 years in prison. Well, Marcel Stein was quite happy with the sentences as she felt that she deserved to rot behind the iron bars. Well, guys, that is it with this case of the Satanic Killings in Krugersdorp. 6 most sadistic killers ever walked the streets of Krugersdorp, South Africa. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, do consider subscribing, and don't forget to click the bell notification so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Also, do leave me a comment down below and tell me, what are your thoughts about Marcel's attitude towards the end? She basically, I think she just sacrificed herself. She realized what she's done was wrong. But let's also not forget the fact that she was only 14 years old when she was thrown in this deep end by her mother and Cecilia, Zach, and all these adults. She was still a baby, basically. And now, do you feel that this 144 years is justified for a child that did not know what she was doing? A child that was convinced that Cecilia was sent by God? What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel sorry for her, or you don't feel sorry for her? Of course, life was taken and we can never get that life back. But let's also think about it. This is a kid. She was a child when all this happened. And I'm truly sorry to all the families that were affected, friends and everybody that were affected by these horrific murders. But anyways, I also want to say, do share this video far and wide so that other true crime lovers like yourself can discover my channel, so that the channel can grow as well. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time with a new true crime video. Goodbye.